Virtue is not a simple value. Very often people speak about value-based leadership. Good. It's good to have value-based leadership than leadership based on no values. All of us will really agree. But values are good things, but it's not enough for leadership. All of us, we have good values, I think. We recognize family as a value, country as a value. Some of us will say God is also a value because we're believers. Whatever it is, we have values. But many people have values, but they cannot achieve those values because they're lacking character. They are lacking the virtues that are dynamic forces that give you the capacity to achieve your values. And they collapse as citizens. Even if they love their country, they collapse completely as citizens because they have not the courage, they have not the prudence, the practical wisdom to be good citizens. They can collapse as parents. Even if they tell you every day, family is for me a value. I value family. But the guy or she has no self-control. She has not the virtue of self-control. And the family collapses because she's not practicing virtue. So virtue is in fact much more important than value. Value are basic things that all of us have. But virtue is this dynamic force that gives you the capacity to do things that people that have no virtue cannot do. And the ancient Greek said, well, if we look at the human beings, we see four fundamental, basic virtues. If one is lacking, everything collapses in the life of an individual. These four basic virtues is called practical wisdom. The first one. We call this in English prudence. And it has nothing to do with be careful. Prudence has nothing to do with be careful. This is very important. For the Greek people, prudence is the habit of making the right decisions. A prudent person is a person that understands what's happening around, who understands well the people he's working with. He knows their qualities, their strengths, their weaknesses. He understands very well who they are. He knows what they are able of. He understands the political situation, the environment, from the economic point of view, from the political point of view, whatever it is. He sees the situation. And then he makes a decision that is appropriate to this situation. This is what prudence is about. Prudence is the first fundamental virtue, first basic virtue that gives you the capacity to be a good decision maker. It is a specific virtue of decision makers. A decision maker is a man or woman who must have the capacity to make the right. I didn't say the correct. I say right. It's very different. Right. Right has to do with what's happening with the truth. The truth of the situation in which you're involved. Correct has to do with rules. You see the difference, enormous difference. A correct decision is a decision that is politically correct, for instance. But it can be wrong from the point of view of nature, from the point of view of the situation, the given situation that is in front of you. So prudence doesn't help you make correct decisions. Prudence is a virtue that gives you the capacity to make the right decision, the decision that fit a given situation. It is a specific virtue of decision makers. And we understand that this is very important in leadership. Leaders have to be good decision makers. All of us understand that it's not enough to be a good decision maker to be a leader. But it's important to be a good decision maker if you want to exercise leadership. Then they went further in their reflection and they thought, well, after the intellect, prudence, we have a second virtue that could be very important. It's courage. What's that? What's courage? Courage is to say, it's not only daring. Courage is fundamentally the capacity to stay the course. When you made a decision, the courageous person is the one who stays the course. Even if there is oppression, if there is a contradiction, even if people inside the organization will tell you, I don't like this decision, he doesn't step back. He said, we know that this is a good decision. We have to go forward and we have to implement it until the end. Courage is about staying the course. And it's also about daring. It's also about having the capacity to dare making, important, magnanimous decisions that are going to transform the whole organization. And I say, well, after courage, what is really needed in a human being? Self-control. Because human beings have passions. What do we do with those passions? What directs those passions? And I thought there is a virtue that directs those passions without destroying them. This virtue is called self-control. They give a name for each of those virtues. And this is self-control is a very important virtue because all of us have passions. And we don't want those passions to destroy us. But we understand that we must not destroy these passions because we are human beings. We have to use the energy of passions. It's a very bad thing to destroy passions. You cannot act without passion. Wrath help you to be courageous when it's needed. Fear help you understand that there is a danger. When people tell you, I'm never afraid, I say, well, I will never work with you. Well, stop it. A guy can drive his car 250 kilometers per hour in the very center of Washington. I'm not afraid. Well, there is a problem here. This is not working. So wrath is good. There is a kind of just wrath that has to be directed. So passions are good. Fear, wrath, these are good things. Everything that has to do with our human nature is good. The only thing is we have to direct it. And then this self-control helps us very often in leadership positions to do what we have to do and not what we like to do. You have a very interesting case here in America. It's President Truman. He was a man who liked very much to deal with social affairs. The day he became president, he understood, I like to deal with social affairs. But this is not what I have to do now. I have to deal with international affairs. And he became a real specialist of what he didn't like. This is leadership. This is self-control. Because all of us, we have a temptation to do what we like to do, what is fun to do, or to deal with urgent matters, not with important ones, with urgent things. It's a question of self-control. In general, people in charge of a community have a clear idea about what they have to do. They have to think in terms of a long-run process about education of the staff. I would say professional education, moral education of the people involved in the process. You have to think of a long-term process, strategy, etc. Very often, people know that this is what they have to do. As CEOs, for instance, they don't do it. They spend just 5% of their time thinking about those very important things. And they do things that others in the organization very often can do much better than they do. And the question here is lack of self-control. They do what they like to do. They do what they are used to do. But they don't do what they are really called to do in the position where they are. Lack of self-control. And seminars on time management do not help those people because their problem is not a technical problem. Their problem is their own nature. It's a virtue they're lacking. The lack of specific virtue that is called self-control. So they can attend millions of seminars on time management. Nothing will happen. It's not a problem of skill. It's not a problem of the intellect. It's not a problem of how you dispatch your time. It's about how you're ready to deal with those things that are not funny. You see what I mean? Are not funny, are not easy for you. So it's a question of virtue. It's not a question of skills. And then the Greek people say, well, human beings, okay, they have intellect, they have a will, courage, intellect, prudence, will, courage, passions. We can direct this with self-control. But human beings are also social beings, which means that they interact with the others. And what is this virtue of the sociability of human beings? They say it's justice. Justice is not just a concept of political science. It's a virtue. It's a part of your being. Justice is the virtue that gives you the capacity to give each one what is due to him. It's the capacity of entering the heart of others. It is the capacity of speaking the truth, of practicing sincerity, truthfulness, sincerity, simplicity, empathy, friendship, cheerfulness. These are virtues that are rooted in the big virtue of justice. They are virtue through which we human beings interact with the others. When you've said that, you've said one thing, that if one of those four virtues is lacking in your life, everything collapses. Imagine you don't have practical wisdom. You have difficulties to understand what's happening around and to make decisions. You don't go very far in life. Objectively, you cannot be a decision maker and you cannot be a leader. Imagine you don't have courage. You're a good man, a good woman who has the capacity to make right decisions, but after 5 minutes, everything collapses because you are not able to implement them. Especially important decisions means always there will be a contradiction. There will be a group of people against you. People don't like change. Good decisions always provoke an opposition. So good decisions demand always courage to implement them. Self-control, well, Aristotle says if you don't have he says that self-control is the virtue of self-love. Noble, true self-love. The one who loves himself has self-control. Those who don't have self-control, it's because they don't love themselves. Because the passions, if they are not under control, they destroy yourself. So people who have self-love, noble self-love, practice self-control. And if you have no justice, then you better stay home, because you cannot interact with people. You cannot enter the hearts of others. You cannot give people what is due to them. You better stay home. So the Greek people said if one of those four basic virtues is lacking in your life, everything collapses. Everything. So I understood very well that all those four virtues are very important in leadership, because if one is missing, everything collapses, not only in the life of leaders, but in the life of all of us. Whatever our position is in society, if one of those virtues is fundamentally lacking, our life is a disaster. It's a disaster. So we understand we have to foster those virtues, we have to develop them. We are not born with virtues. We're born with biology, we're born with temperament. I went on with my reflections, and I thought that these fundamental virtues are very important, but they are not the specific leadership virtues. They are important for everybody, and they are very important for leaders, because it gives leaders the capacity to do things that other people cannot do. But what is the substance of leadership? And I had to spend time thinking about great leaders who've done great things in history, or people that are not so well known but that have done things. And I came to the conclusion that the very specific virtue of leaders is called magnanimity.